and showed us all how evil we could be. And then our rare moments of heroism become more celebrated. That's all Sin City is about. It's Jim Thompson's world. It's not Steven Spielberg's world. It's a world where we are driven by ugly impulses and we do good things rarely.
AKAPADers, welcome to another hot butt-ass episode of Wildstorm Productions Wednesday, aka Wildstorm Productions. Guys, you know we're hanging out here in Jim Lee's office. That's our boy over there. He's the guy he created with Chris Claremont, Scott Williams, X-Men #1, highest selling comic book of all time. And through that one book, we go right into Wildstorm Productions, the Image comic book boom. Jim Lee leaves Marvel comic books, becomes one of the Image 6, Image 7, maybe even Image 8, depending on how we look at the founding of Image Comics. But we get Wildcats. And Wildcats is a success, but it's also a success just of the time. More people are in comic stores, more people are buying comics, more people are even reading comic books more than ever in the 90s. It was easy to sell. It was easy to make a couple million per book. Now, but what is the first real pop? Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee recruits Sam Keith for Darker Image. Darker Image, it was like one of these things we always wanted more of. We got one issue of Darker Image, polybagged with the trading card, and we never got issue 2. And it was horrible. Rob Liefeld spins his Blood Wolf into a 4-issue miniseries that it comes and goes. No one really cares about it. Sam Keith takes the Max, which was a previous character that he profiled in Calico Primer issue 5, I believe. But Sam Keith takes Max. Max gets its own series. Max is a big hit. Max goes to MTV. But then we have Jim Lee's first real creator hit, Deathblow. And then tragedy strikes. Tragedy. After introducing, Jim Lee melds all these ideas of how Frank Miller is producing his artwork for Sin City. And this shows you how impactful Sin City. Sin City is really the nucleus of everything 90s. So many creators emulated that style, but Jim Lee threw his hat into the ring, and we got Deathblow, and we got this Jim Lee, heavy shadows, negative space, no cross-hatching. Oh my god, the first time we saw Jim Lee without cross-hatching, all around this military dude in the jungle. He's basically one of the guys from Predator, right? Like, he's in the jungle, he's surrounded by brush all the time. Deathblow, right? And then Deathblow, right, Jim Lee does the right move. Darker Image 2 doesn't seem to be happening, or isn't happening quick enough. Jim Lee quickly pivots and gives us Deathblow Cybernary issue 1. Now, last week, we profiled Cybernary issue 1. Deathblow flipped into Cybernary 1, and this was Jim Lee's position of doing almost like a heavy metal anthology. It was just 2 characters unrelated to Stormwatch or Wildcats, which were the Wildstorm Productions universe proper, or Prime, or 616 titles at the time. But Jim Lee just gives us Deathblow, and people eat it up. People actually, they just love this character. They love Jim Lee drawing this. At the time, people rather have more of Jim Lee's Deathblow than Jim Lee's Wildcats. But Wildcats was building momentum, getting into Saturday morning cartoons, getting into the Wildcats toys. Jim Lee couldn't abandon Wildcats. Wildcats was a train. It was a freight train that was, like it was racing down the track to compete 1-to-1 with X-Men. So what happens, right? Deathblow goes all the way into Fire from Heaven and dies in Fire from Heaven, which is Wildstorm Productions' second giant universe-wide crossover. As time marched on, Deathblow gets integrated into Team 7. He slowly gets introduced into Wildstorm proper. And now he's a universe guy, we'll call him. He's not just this independent, cool creation by Jim Lee. And the book, we know the book kind of has a solid 3 years. But Jim Lee's really on for 3 issues. So what happens? Well, Tim Sale, Mr. Long Halloween, Mr. Superman for All Seasons. That's my absolute favorite of his work, by the way. I just love looking at that Superman for All Seasons. Tim Sale comes on. He comes on as a career comic book artist, and he brings that Frank Miller style into Wildstorm Productions. And he does it with this issue. I want to showcase the one issue that Tim Sale did Frank Miller in. Now, we can look at a lot of the splash pages, the interior posters, some of the panels, the positioning of his line work, right? The positioning of Tim Sale's line work for Deathblow screams that he's giving a nod to the origin of the look of Deathblow, which is Frank Miller's Sin City. But we have one issue that is meant to exist in Frank Miller's Sin City universe. In a way, we can imagine when we look at this issue, and I'm going to show it to you guys, that Deathblow is at the same bar that Marv is hanging out in. So guys, a little itty bitty tidbit here, but we're going to hit that drawing table. Tim Sale brings Deathblow to Frank Miller's Sin City. Let's go.
There he is. Deathblow. But before we get into the book, guys, say hello to Pike. Say hello to Crypt, the table mascots. You guys know Crypt from Extreme Studios and Pike from, well, Wildstorm Productions. This cover is great, guys. I just think it's quick, it's simple. It's that loose Jim Lee brush style. We can kind of tell he's maybe using fine liners. Great positive, negative shapes. It just reminds us of the art style inside of this book, which is fast and easy. For some reason, a lot of people looked at Frank Miller's Sin City artwork as fast and easy. They kind of forget how much labor Miller put into those Sin City pages, even though they appear to be quick and easy. This cover is great because it highlights all the movements of this issue. Of course, we have Deathblow. He's not really Deathblow at all in this comic. We have our Nick Fury character, our Lynch character, just a guy that's behind the scenes that knows all the going-ons. We have our Babe that gets featured in this book. I think you guys can guess in what way she gets featured. We have our Nun, and we have a boy. Now, who's the boy? Well, we're going to get right into... Well, let's cut away to a Frank Miller reference real quick. In Dark Knight Returns... Cheers, by the way, guys. Get yourself some of that morning coffee. In Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, he does something sneaky. Sometimes we have to put our mind inside of the comic book. What I mean to say is we have to really look at what happens. Like, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a bunch of panels. We're looking at pretty much the origin of the Dark Knight. But all of these panels, and this was really big in DC Comics 85, 86, and 87. A bunch of these panels, what they do is they slow down the story. They slow it down. And if we go through just issue 1 of DKR, we really see the paneling, right? We're packed, lots of panels, right? Lots of panels. We're slowing things down. We're absorbing information. We're setting everything up. We have a world to introduce you into, and we have elements of all the characters to remind you of. But then as we proceed through the issue, what happens? I think you guys can already see. Our panels get bigger, bigger, and bigger. And they bleed out. And then we kind of slow down again as we get into issue 2. Again, action, more panels, So it's a way to, I almost look at it like an accordion. We compress and we draw it out. We compress, we draw it out. That's what Tim Sale's trying to do here. We want to say that Tim Sale potentially is working off of a very loose story situation, right? Like he's working off of a potentially, in my view, what we will call like an index card. And they're giving it to Tim Sale. And if we go back to the cover, let me show you guys what I think is happening. And guys, I got this super thick cardstock that I'm not able to use, so we're just going to use it here. I hate wasting money on paper. I really do. But if we just look at the cover, right? Let's just say issue 5, right? We have Deathblow, all right? Then we have Kid. Then we have None, right? Then we have our Fury. Then we have our Babe, okay? What we're doing here, by the time we get to issue 6, right? All of these elements, Fury, None, and Babe, right? All of these elements, they have to carry over to the next effing issue. And so on and so forth. And through these, let's just call them index cards. And through these index cards, we determine a plot. A plot unfolds. So, like, Deathblow here, like, Cancer saves Kid or knows about Kid, right? And then Babe. She goes home with Deathblow. She's not in this issue. So she gets, right? So she doesn't carry over. Fury recruits, you know. Yeah. And I'm messing up here. Fury recruits, right? And maybe like Fury executes here. None. Finds Kid, right? So Kid escapes, right? So real quick, I'm just trying to illustrate how comic book plots actually work. And why someone like Chris Claremont, John Byrne on Fantastic Four, why they get so much credit, because those guys were so good at doing this. And this is the method. This, you might want to say, this is the absolute true Marvel method. Because we have a lot of characters. And we're just setting up this issue, guys. So we get in here and we get some nice exposition of a kid. A kid that drowns in the lake. And he gets brought back to life by our boy here, witnessed by a nun. There we go, right? The cover reminds us of the tones of this issue. We have a blue logo. We have a little bit of a blue shade here. But this book is red, black, and white. And the color is used so artfully that even with those three colors, we can see our scene transitions. But here's Deathblow with his do-rag. And he's getting a cancer diagnostics. And he essentially, I think they tell him he's got 2 months to live. This is the death in Deathblow. So Mr. Cray is having a bad day, you bastard. The doctors go back and forth, and they're doing comic book science mumbo jumbo. The comic book science mumbo jumbo is that there's a mutation, we have to track it, we don't have the tools to identify it, we need more samples. It's good stuff. But Deathblow is flipping out. He goes after the doctor. The nun walks in. Doctor covers. Everything's fine, Nurse Haynes. it was just a misunderstanding, we'll be all right. And here we go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to lose control like that. But the last time I was here, you said I had at least a year, maybe more. They're like, sorry, Charlie. It's actually now a couple months. The last few weeks may be especially difficult for you. Is there anyone I can contact? No, there's no one at all. So you have to remember, we're moving away from like the Jim Lee era of Deathblow. And we're really getting into a story. Issue 5 begins that story. Issue 5 through issue 12, we kind of, we march and we wrap a lot of things up. And we move the character into a different place. Where do we have to move the character? We have to, number one, embed him more into the Wildstorm universe. And number two, we have to get him off of the death settings. Because we need this guy for future adventures. We get some nice references. They start to march him towards the Wildstorm universe. We hear that he's a part of the Genesis experiments. We hear that he's a part of Team 7. He's embedded in the history. But there's no one that he's run into yet from Wildstorm proper. So we get into like the nun action. We're at the Vatican because, right, Da Vinci Code, right? All the horror of the world, guys, is run through the Vatican. And we get a concept of a chosen one of a child. Chosen one, a child. And we lay out all the exposition that there's a kid out there. There's people that know about the kid, and the kid is special. We go through an operation. I believe it was Bosnia, and this is Commander Craig. Okay, so this is everything they talk about here is kind of like issue 1, pre-issue 1, darker image. But he goes on the mission. The mission's not 100%, but Craig comes out alive. Evidence indicates they provided geographic data for the cruise missile strike on Purgatory. That released the Black Angel. We're not sure which one of the men were responsible. Sanctions have been placed on all 3 survivors. A message to those who challenge the Order of the Cross. Our men are tracking them down as we speak, as the Americans are so fond of saying you can run. So they're hunting down the people that kind of know something. They're trying to cover up their tracks. This is the Order of the Cross at the Vatican. Again, there's something to where, like the Frank Miller era, where everything got a nun, right? Like nuns became cool because of Frank Miller. Deathblow is embedded in the nun as Daredevil's Frank Miller was embedded in the nun. This was kind of like cool at one time. Now it just seems silly and a little bit corny and a little bit too much low-hanging fruit. But here we go. We go right into our, guys, welcome to Sin City. If you need any of my help in the description to why this page alone is Sin City, I'm sorry, this is not the comic book channel for you. But, we have Goldie, we have Nancy, if you want to call her Sin City. But yeah, this is a babe. They reference it. Sorry, it was Baghdad. It wasn't Bosnia. But they referenced Bosnia. And essentially, Deathblow here, or Clayton Cray, Mr. Cray, this chick's like, hey, you got any money for me? Because, guys, I know, like, this panel here, you might read this panel, you might just say to yourself, this is not how the real world works. Maybe. This isn't a charity, I'm sorry, been a little distracted lately. I bet I can help you forget your troubles more than that bottle. If you don't think this is how strip clubs interact, you have not been to a strip club. You just haven't. He gives her a $100 bill. She's into it. But he notices, and guys, Sin City, look at the smoke cutting through. Now, you can say, is it Frank Miller or is it Will Eisner, right? Frank Miller, everyone had eyes on Frank Miller at this point. The smoke, right? Like you always want to say the captions ruined the effect of this panel, because like even the gray here, if all of this was white, I'm telling you guys, this would be even closer to Sin City. And we can do some of that, right? We can do some of that, like right here. See? We can really make this into a Sin City panel. We don't need these gray tones. We don't need these gray tones. I mean, we don't even need, we can block out this panel border, do that, do the opposite in this direction. We can really play with the negative spaces here. That's what I mean about Sin City. But yeah, Deathblow kind of, you know, somewhat hits on the girl somewhat hits on him. I love this Tim Sale hand. Guys, if you're still with me in the comments, let me know. Do we like this hand? I do. I think it's great. Yeah, but he's like, hey, there's these 3 guys over there. I got better things to look forward to. So I shut up and put my nose down and think about the sugar. And they kind of do so. Like, the girl's name is Sugar. They make some weird comments. Not going to go through them. But then we cut away. And this is where we needed here for like the cutaway. We needed a little bit more, like, you know, like maybe like red. We just need better red. Like maybe that, okay? The point I'm getting at real quick, AKAPADers, is we don't have too much knowledge that this is a scene transition, okay? Like, this is questionable. As soon as we start reading the caption and we get into the word balloons, we realize we're in a different scene. So we're not outside the strip club. That's why we have to always be mindful of tagging our environments. And I don't care. We all work in the same panels, but you have to get creative about it. So the police here, and you guys can see where, right? Like, we really could have, like, even this guy. If this guy had some like red highlights on him, right? And maybe even here, like red door, like this dude, like this. We just needed more red here, okay, AKAPADers, because it would just what I hate to do it. I just think this needs, like, maybe like leave the smoke. See, that's how we would know. We would know we're transitioning into a different scene, a different environment, relatively a different world. But they're tracking a serial killer. The serial killer has a kid, and he's being hunted. So this kind of rogue cop goes in, and as the rogue cop goes in to get the kid, held by this guy, a maniac. That's, you know, we don't see him, but the crazy dude with the Converses. Here we go. The Black Angel told me the boy must die. So he knows where the boy is. They fight over the boy. The cop dude, right? Dude, question mark, basically kills the crazy dude in front of the kid. And we see that the cop dude is a babe. Herod is still out there. So so we're somewhat like, so we have this other plot element. So the girl is connected to a like serial killer pursuing the kid, right? That's one of our index cards, okay? And she made progress. She's like, hey, she's like, I got the kid, I got a kid, but the serial killer's still out there. So again, that's an index card. That index card, right, moves on to the next issue. The index card with the Order of the Cross moves on to the next issue. Okay, the index card with the fate and what's happening with Deathblow moves on to the next issue. But then we're back into Sin City, aka the drop zone. and Deathblow, they're kind of talking about, like, they talk about Clay, aka this guy over here. Not Caden, Cole Cash. They talk about Cole Cash a little bit. And he's like, hey, you Team 7 guys are all the same. He's like, I hung out with Cole Cash, and the whole place went up in smokes. And it's like, some things never change. But they sneak up a piano wire, and they pull it, right? They pull it around Deathblow's neck. And again, too, like, we're still dealing with people emulating Frank Miller's position, Frank Miller's style. The hair here is perfectly Frank Miller, okay? But then we still have to do things a little bit different. So this type of action is not really in Sin City, but we're Image Comics, and it's Deathblow, and it's Homage Studios, and we have Jim Lee. So Deathblow's got to fight these guys in the beautifully smoky bar. They said you were good, but I guess you have to be that good if you've taken out Hopper. So Hopper, I didn't realize that Hopper gets taken out because Deathblow grabs like a 9-ball and throws it, right? And I guess like he takes out Hopper, and Hopper's like bleeding. Not quite communicative. That's a little bit of what I was getting at. But yeah, Deathblow gets clipped. They see him go down. He gets up, and here we go. Nice hero shot. The girl's ready to go home. To be continued. That's it. He takes the girl home. The girl's index card is over. Deathblow, having 2 months to live, goes to bang the girl. And this dude's like, you guys are all trouble. Get the hell out of my bar. All of you Wildstormers are in trouble. But there it is. So really what I was saying earlier is like, say, like we kind of can approach a little bit of a Frank Miller style in this way, right? Like the coloring can transform it. But when we get close to black and white, it really sticks out. And we get some like Miller. We get some good Miller takes here. Miller. This panel, Miller, right? Like it's all. I just really do dig the smoke-filled bar. It's just like all Miller here, Miller, and you really want to say this is the drop zone is where Marv hangs out in Sin City, but then we move on, right? Like the index cards move on to the next issue, and we buy issue 6. It's good. Page to page, panel to panel, issue to issue storytelling. Everything we see here, though, this is not in books today. And mostly the reason, and we have to get into the reason. The reason is because Deathblow, because of the boom era, sold. It just sold. So you might start with like 1 million issues sold, maybe 850,000 issues sold. By here, you might be at 700,000. You have a couple years to burn through. Like your sales, like, and I don't know Deathblow. So Deathblow 1, right, gets 1 million. By the time we get to like 20, right, there's enough of this, okay? By the time we get to issue 20, there's enough in the tank to keep the series going. And that's kind of what the boom era creates. So we get, because of that though, you know, we get room to grow. We get room to do something amazing in Deathblow. Is it a tragedy? The series shifted creators, talents, writers, artists, and somewhat drifted into obscurity. Yes. Because what we see here during what we like to call now the Tim Sale era of Deathblow, we get good stuff. Is it good enough to keep going forever? Potentially,